Most people think moral injury happens on a battlefield, a firefight, a convoy, a deployment overseas. But during my doctoral research into moral injury, I encountered something that completely challenged that assumption. I learned about men and women who never walked patrol. They never kicked down a door. They never carried a rifle through a village. Yet many of them carried wounds that looked remarkably similar to combat veterans. And here's what makes their story so surprising. At the end of their shift, they drove home. They stopped for gas. They picked up groceries. They sat down with their families for dinner. Then they did it all again the next day. So how can someone fight a war from thousands of miles away and still carry the weight of it in their soul? And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Today, we're continuing our journey through Chapter 4 of my book, Moral Injury and Redemption. We've talked about PTSD. We've talked about the moral burden many warriors carry after traditional combat. But today's story is different. Today's warriors may never set foot on a battlefield. They may never hear incoming fire. They may never deploy to a combat zone. Yet, many still carry the same moral and spiritual questions that have followed warriors home for generations. Today, we're looking at one of the most misunderstood forms of moral injury I've ever studied.
Out here in the woods, distance can be deceptive. I spent countless mornings watching wildlife from hundreds of yards away. The farther away something is, the easier it becomes to feel disconnected from it. Modern warfare created a similar assumption. Many people believe distance protects the human conscience, but research suggests otherwise. Remote pilots and intelligence analysts may be physically separated from the battlefield, but they are often connected to it in ways many people don't realize. Sometimes they watch a target for days. They learn routines. They observe relationships. They see families. They see humanity. Then eventually, they may participate in a decision that ends a life. The body may be safe, but the soul is still present. And that's where things become complicated. There's a myth that because drone operators are far from the battlefield, they are somehow protected from its effects. But that's not what many studies have found. The rates of emotional and psychological struggles among remote operators can be surprisingly similar to those found in more traditional combat roles. The reason isn't difficult to understand. Technology changes the battlefield. It doesn't change the human conscience. In many combat situations, people are responding to immediate danger. There is fear. There is survival. There is chaos. Remote warfare is different. It can be methodical, calculated, patient. And that creates a different kind of burden. Knowing something is legally justified doesn't always remove the spiritual weight that follows. And this is where the story becomes especially difficult. A traditional deployment creates some separation between war and home. Remote warfare often does not. One moment you're observing violence, the next moment you're driving home. One moment you're making life and death decisions. The next moment you're standing in the line at the grocery store. One moment you're carrying the weight of what you've witnessed. The next moment you're helping your child with homework. The human mind can make the transition, but the human soul often struggles to. And when people feel unable to talk about what they've seen or experienced, the burden becomes even heavier. If you're a drone operator, analyst, veteran, first responder, or anyone carrying a burden that no one else can see, I want to tell you something. Your struggle does not mean you're weak. It means you're human. Human beings were created with a conscience. We were created to wrestle with questions of right and wrong, life and death, justice and mercy. And when those questions go unanswered, they don't simply disappear. They settle deep within us. And that's why moral injury matters. It's not just about what happened, it's about what happened to the soul. And that's also why healing requires more than information. It requires truth, it requires community, it requires grace. And sometimes it requires having the courage to finally tell someone what you've been carrying. The good news is that moral injury is not the end of the story. A wounded conscience can heal. A burdened soul can find peace. And hidden wounds do not have to remain hidden forever. In our next chapter, we're going to talk about the warning signs of moral injury, how to recognize it in yourself, how to recognize it in someone you love, and how we can begin the process of moral repair and redemption. If this message spoke to you, let me know in the comments. Your story may help someone else realize they're not carrying this burden alone. If you'd like to learn more, you'll find links to my book and other resources below. This is Adkison Outdoors. Faith, freedom, family, and the outdoors. Until next time, leave tracks worth following in the woods and in your life. God bless.